My only question about this article that I'm going to read to you, it's a very brief one, is how do they know all this stuff? I mean, I'm not falling for that same trick that they did on us a few years ago when they said the property prices were dropping. That was, I think, about 2019, maybe 18. Then they were saying it 2020 how um, this illness was going to have it completely um, decimate the property market, and the completely opposite was true. So, am I saying that what this article is saying, the true or the opposite is going to eventuate? I don't really know. To be honest, let me read you an article and then I'll tell you what I think. House prices to plunge 11% next year, new NAB report warns. NAB, NAB, for those watching overseas, is one of the four big banks in Australia. The article goes on to say there is bad news for homeowners, with house prices expected to plunge sharply as the Reserve Bank considers hiking interest rates. Considers hiking interest rates. Very interesting. This was written by Alex Turner Cohen. Lovely. Goes on to say property prices will take a turn for the worst midway through this year. So this year is 2022. We're in February. And by 23, house prices will plunge by a whopping 11%. This is what the article says. So we already have sensationalism saying that the house prices will plunge sharply. So we got that plunge sharply plugged in. And they will plunge again by a whopping 11%. Article goes on to say that's according to the latest NAB forecast released last Friday. NAB drastically revised its initial outlook for property prices over the next 2 years after the Reserve Bank flagged that interest rates could rise at some point in 22. Interesting. In its residential property survey for the latest quarter, NAB warned, with our view on rate hikes coming forward, we now expect a turning point in property prices to occur in the second half of 22. They know it. It's not going to be the first half, but it'll be the second half. All right. The looming promise of rising interest rates means their outlook for this year will see prices significantly flatter than before, while we will see a slightly larger fall for 23. Property is set to rise in value by just 3% in the coming year. So we're in 2022. So it will rise by 3% in the coming year. This is very similar to what the Commonwealth Bank report came out with a few months ago. That's a pitiful amount compared to last year, when Australian real estate soared by 22% in a boom that hadn't been seen since the mid-1980s. All right. There is a table, put it up on the screen there, NAB hedonic dwelling price forecast in percentages. So we can see here that Sydney's gone up 2.7% in 20, and then 21 saw 25.3% rise. But what the forecast says is that in this year, 2022, Sydney is going to see 1.9% rise. So that's the forecast. And then year 23, we'll see minus 11.4%, same as Melbourne. As you can see, some of the others will see smaller drops. Perth seems to also have a significantly larger drop than the others in 2023 by minus 8.1%. So the average is 9.3% fall in 2023, but you can see that on the screen. Although next year's 11% decline might seem like a big drop, the report's author said it was actually quite a controlled plunge. So it's a controlled, but it's a plunge. We see this as a relatively orderly decline, the report noted. It is important to remember this correction comes after a very sharp run up in prices over the last year. NAB brought forward its predictions of a correction off the back of rising interest rate expectations. In terms of forecasts, we have brought forward the timing of the correction we expect in house prices to late 22 as affordability constraints begin to bite and rising mortgage rates place downward pressure on prices, the bank said. This would offset gains seen in early 22 so that overall prices end the year roughly flat. So that's this year, 22. We see the trend continuing through 23, ending the year around 10% lower. Then they have a graph. Somehow they know. I'll put it up on the screen. I don't know if it means a lot to anyone. It's a NAB residential property index by state. Sydney and Melbourne will be hit hardest, dropping by nearly 12% each next year. Both metropolitan property markets will only 1.9 and 1.2% respectively for 22, a snail's pace compared to previous periods of time. Hobart would experience a lower drop for 23 at only 4%. The combined capital is 9.4% drop in 23. Interest rates could rise as early as November this year, NAB warned. And then there's another graph that hopefully makes sense to someone. It's a NAB's residential property index in previous years. With COVID moronic case numbers soaring in some parts of the country, and not others, some housing markets are set to rise this year and others are expected to drop considerably. Confidence levels are now highest in Northern Territory and the ACT, while they've never been lower in Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. Never been lower. Normally, contrarian view here would be that if the expectation is very low or the confidence indicator is low, and that normally means we're going to see another boom. That normally happens in the stock market when there's shorts and longs in the market. However, that's not how property works. So what my opinion on this is that they'll be wrong again, but not in a sense that the price will go up. I think they'll be wrong by the percentage, the amount it drops, because if it needs to correct to some, let's call it fair value, we've talked on this channel about that, and there's been plenty of comments, and I appreciate all the comments down in the comment section there. And it would have to pull back 40% just to go back to some less insane levels. So are we saying 50, 60? I don't know, but and I hate to say it will be a very interesting year, this 2022, especially this February, March, and we are in February 22 now. But Feb, March, I think they've got something big for us, maybe something similar to the illness that has been plaguing us in the last 2 years. So the biggest declines, this is the confidence. So the report states that the 2-year confidence measure was highest in the Northern Territory and ACT. The biggest decline were noted in South Australia, Western Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, and the drops were in this order. There is a short-term bullish outlook for Victoria, but then confidence will wane. How did they know this? Okay, I suppose they measure it somehow. So that was my opinion on this. I can't express it any other way. They're always wrong, but I think this time they're going to be wrong about being right. So they'll miss the number by which this may actually unwind.